What's up, guys? So big day here on the channel. We're going to be installing the Grizzly roof rack from Sherpa. We're going to kind of take this truck into a little bit of an overland build going forward. I want to start doing a lot of camping. This is going to be the first step, looking at bed racks and stuff, so stay tuned for all that. But I cannot wait to get this Sherpa rack up on top of the TRD Pro. Let's get it in the garage, get everything unboxed, and get started. Just a couple of tips before we go any further. Number one, disconnect the negative side of your battery. We are going to be working around the airbags. You never want to chance that, so just take that negative side off and make sure it cannot make contact. The second thing is there's two tools that you're going to want to grab if you don't already have them. A rivet tool, which you need. There's no way around that. The second tool is a set of drill stops. You don't necessarily need them, but as you're going to see, it'll make your life a lot easier and a lot less nerve-wracking. You'll understand why as we go through. I'll link the ones down below that I got off Amazon. They're cheap. Do yourself a favor and get them. It'll definitely make your life a lot less stressful as we're going through this. Okay, before we get started, here's what you're going to get in the box. You have your two side plates. You have your wind fairing right there. 7 crossbars. The Grizzly comes with 7. And then your hardware pack. Let me get all that out. We're going to separate everything, kind of get everything together and organized. It's going to make install a heck of a lot easier. Do yourself a favor, and when you're opening up your hardware pack, you can see it's separated into sections. The top section has this hardware in it right here. Take your utility knife and just carefully separate in between the top and the next section. That hardware right there is going to all go together. That's for connecting your wind fairing to the cross bracket when we get to that point. All right, so just keep all that separate, and then now we'll go ahead and open up the middle pack and get all that organized as well. Okay, so here's what we end up with. Again, we kept our wind fairing hardware separate. That's all right there. All of the rest of the stuff was in that other pack. So a couple things I want to point out. When you're separating, you can see you have 2 different size bolts. They're easy to differentiate. These silver washers, though, be very careful. There's 9 of each, and they are very, very similar in size. If you're not paying attention, you might think they're the same, but they are not. I don't know if it's going to show up on camera, but just be aware that there are different size silver washers. The black ones are all the same, but again, there's 9 of those and 9 of these. I think they give you a couple extra, which is why there's like an odd number, but there are 2 different size silver washers, so be careful there. One other thing I want to point out when you're looking at your mounting brackets and your rivet mounts, you can see this is what they look like. But there's 2 for the front and 2 for the rear. So if you look, you can see these 2 have a very slight curve to them. Okay, these are going to be your front rivet mounts. These 2, you can see there's no crease. They're flat on the bottom. So if you take them apart, that's what they look like. Totally flat. Those are for the rear. Speaking of the front and rear mounts, this is what we have right here. The easiest way to tell, front and rear is very easy because they marked them. You can see there's an F on the 2 fronts, there's an R on the 2 rear, but they do have to go in a specific orientation. If you look, there's a little notch on each corner. That little notch has to be facing the front of the vehicle. So if you're looking at it like this, you can see all 4 of them have that little notch. This would be the driver side front, passenger side front, passenger rear, driver rear. Okay, so just make sure you're paying attention to that when we're getting it up on the truck, and I'll kind of reinforce that as we're going through. Other than that, pretty straightforward, but just pay attention to those couple things when you're separating your hardware. What's up, guys? Wanted to interject a little bit really early on in this video to mention a couple things. Spoiler alert, the rack is already on, as you can see above me. Love it. Stay tuned. We'll give you a really good look at the whole thing all the way around the truck, how it operates with the moonroof, if there's anything you need to avoid. All of that is towards the end of the video. But there's one thing I wanted to mention. If you're going to do this by yourself, I want to hopefully save you a headache that I wish I knew going into the install. Make sure you have a very good set of drill bits. I thought I did have a good set, and I ended up running into a little bit of a problem, which you'll hear about as we go through the install. So make sure you have a very good set of drill bits, and then have a backup set just in case. Again, you'll see why. I actually had to kind of interrupt the install and run to Lowe's. So I just want to save you a headache if you're going to do this on your own. Let's get back to the install. Hope you guys enjoy it. As always, leave any questions, comments, or concerns down below. See ya! So first thing we want to do is check your rivet mounts, all 4 of them, the 2 curved and 2 flat. Take one of your rivets and see if it'll fit through the end holes. Okay, because of the powder coating, which you can see actually mine don't, so you want to check this on all 4 mounts. Before you go any further, you want to take a 3/16 inch bit, and that's because of powder coating building up in those holes. So just take your 3/16 inch bit and just go through both of the outer holes on all 4 mounts. Just gonna go back and double check. Oh, I'm gonna have to go through a little bit more. Basically, you need your rivets to fit through these outer holes on all 4 mounting brackets. You need them to fit through there. You don't want it to be loose, but it has to go through. You know, you can still see I'm struggling to get it through. So I'm gonna drill through a little bit more. So now you can see, take the rivet, push it through. And again, you don't want it to be loose, but now you can see it'll go through there. Again, make sure you do that on all 8 locations, 2 on each rivet mount. Now that we have all 8 holes drilled out to the proper size and those rivets will go through, we're going to temporarily connect our mounting brackets to our rivet mounts. So again, just make sure you have the 2 curved paired up with your front mounts, the 2 flat rivet mounts with the rear brackets. Okay, so in order to do this, we're just going to take, and again, you want to make sure that little notch that I showed you, that's going to go to the front of the vehicle. We have one of the curved rivet mounts. We're just going to take it, put it down like this, and we're going to take the bigger of the bolts and washers, I believe they're M8s, and we're just going to finger tight secure these 2 pieces together. We're going to do this on for all 4 locations, and again, just make this finger tight for right now. Here you can see we have all 4 mounts secured to the rivet mounts. Again, just hand tight. You don't have to go crazy for right now. All right, next we're going to want to secure 2 of the crossbars to the side panels or sidebars. Okay, this is upside down, obviously, and what you want to do is when you're looking at the back, this is the rear of the sidebar. You want to come to the second slot from the rear. Okay, so you can see you have this long slot in the back, not long slot, but there's slot right there. Come to this one here, and then you're also going to want to use the frontmost slot right there. Okay, so we're going to take 2 of our crossbars, and again, the sidebar is upside down right now. It's just easier to do that way. So we're going to line up our crossbar to that front slot that I just showed you, and we're going to take the longer of the black button heads with the black washers, go through the outside of this slot and start screwing into the side of the crossbar. There's threaded holes on the sides of the crossbars. So I'm just going to go ahead and get 2 started here, and then we'll come back to this slot here, the second one from the rear. Same thing, 2 of the longer black button heads with washers through that slot and screw into the sidebar. So then you want to go ahead and repeat the process with the other sidebar. Same 2 slots on this one, using the same hardware, of course. And we're just going to snug these up. And one last thing I want to show you before we move on. Okay, so here's where we are. We have both of the sidebars connected with 2 crossbars in the 2 slots that I showed you. One last thing I want to show you. In all 4 locations, you see how the 2 bolts are centered in that slot? You want to make sure in all 4 spots you do that, because this is going to be, you know, we're going to be starting to kind of line it up. We're going to be putting it up on the truck. So you want to make sure those are dead center in the middle of those slots in all 4 locations. All right, now we're going to take our assembled mounting brackets with the rivet mounts attached that we did, and we're going to put them onto the rack. Now, again, this is upside down, so it could be a little kind of confusing. Just make sure you have obviously this is the front of the rack where it slopes up, because this is going to come down over the front of the hood there, or not the hood, of the roof. So this is the front. Make sure you have your front brackets in this area, and then again, because we're doing it upside down, you want that cutout or that notch that I showed you earlier, make sure that's facing the front. So this would go right here, okay? So that's how we know we have the right bracket. So what you're gonna do is, you're gonna take your T-nuts, and we're gonna put them, you can see they have a flat side and a curved side. The curved side is gonna go down into the channel, okay? So we're just gonna we're gonna kinda, if you can see how I'm doing this, just kind of angle it down and drop it down into the slot. Okay, so again, Circle part is going to go down into the slot, like so. Okay. Doesn't matter that, like, you see how there's a longer side and a shorter side? That does not matter. So then we're going to take our other, the smaller silver bolts with the smaller silver washers. I believe these are 1/4 inch. And that's what we're going to use to secure this to the crossbar. So we're just going to line up our holes. And just start securing it to the crossbar. Just going to take it out a little bit because I was a little too close to the side. So just line up your holes with the T-nuts down in the slots there. And you want these to be somewhat snug, but you want to be able to slide this across the bar for right now. Okay, so don't really tighten those down. You want it to be a little snug so they don't just go flopping everywhere, but you do want to be able to move these feet for right now. I'm going to go ahead and do that in all 4 locations. One last little tip, slide your feet or your mounts all the way out to the sidebars. You can see we did it in all 4 locations. That way we're about to get it up on the truck and you don't want those feet hitting the top of your moonroof or the top of your roof when you go to put it up there. So just slide them out to the ends. Let's get this up on the truck. Okay, so it is now time to put it up on the truck, and this is much easier if you have a second taller person to go up and over. I'm going to show you what we did. My wife and I both had the same idea, actually. We put a blanket up top there to protect the painted surface and the moonroof. So basically, she's over there. I don't know if you can see her, but she's on the other side. I'm going to come up over with the truck. This is all going to make sense, I hope. And she's going to be ready over there to kind of grab it, and we'll just place it down on the roof. Wish us luck. If you guys end up seeing this video, it went well. If not, you'll never know. Okay, we're up with no damage. So now you want to put the 4 feet or the 4 mounts in your channel up here on top of the foam. So we just kind of have to line them up and get them in place temporarily. All right, guys, that was close, but it's up there, and we did make some initial adjustments. Basically, right now, you're just trying to get it centered side to side and front to back. Eyeball it. You can even measure gaps, make sure everything kind of looks good. The last thing we can do to really make sure it's centered side to side is temporarily install the wind fairing. In order to do that, you can see it has 6 holes, 2, 2, and 2, okay? So you're gonna take a crossbar, and then that wind fairing hardware that I showed you in the beginning has 6 of the T-nuts. I'm not even sure if that's what they're called, but these pieces here, I think they're called T-nuts. So what we're gonna do is just kind of line everything up, and we're gonna temporarily attach the wind fairing to a crossbar. So they're going to go in the same way as I showed you. Circle or half circle part down, flat side up. And you want to kind of line these up with the holes, because that's what we're going to be using to attach the wind fairing to the crossbar. Then take the button heads, the shorter button heads for the wind fairing with the washers that were with them. And I'm going to start here in the middle. Doesn't really matter. You do want to pay attention. The wind fairing does have the word Grizzly on it. Make sure you're putting it, you know, the Grizzly should be facing you. So we're going to line up our wind fairing with the holes of the T-nuts down below. So smaller button head with the flat washer. And we're going to screw down into those T-nuts. Leave those 2 loose, because now we have to slide it back and forth until we can see down into the next set of T-nuts. Last 2. All 6 are in place, and then basically just make sure your wind fairing lines up on the edges. So I have a finger on each edge, and it's lining up perfect with the edge of the crossbar underneath. Okay, so now we can take this up and attach this to the front of the rack. And this will help us kind of make sure it's all centered and looking good before we mark our locations to drill. Okay, so now we're just going to take the wind fairing with the crossbar, bring it up to the front, and there's slanted slots on the front of each side of the roof rack. Take 4 total, 2 on each side of the longer 1-inch button heads with the flat washers, and we're going to screw through these slanted into the crossbar, and that's how we're going to secure the wind fairing. So I'll let my wife go ahead and start her side first. All right, just so you know where we're at, we do have all 4 started, and we have the wind fairing pushed all the way down in this slot for right now. You should have a gap, a very small gap, you know, going across the entire hood of the entire roof of the truck. So I'm just going to snug these. We don't have to get these too tight because this is basically just for lining up. So now, having the wind fairing on, it's going to be a little bit easier to kind of stand in the front and, you know, make sure everything looks good, lined up right where we want it before we mark our locations. All right, guys, let's give you a look. My wife and I have been around the truck 73 times, me and my OCD. Make sure all of our gaps, the gap from one side to another on the wind fairing. The other gap you want to pay attention to is you can see the gap between the sidebar and the roof. Make sure that's even all the way across on both sides. Make sure it looks even. And then I even got up in the back of the truck. Let me jump up in the bed and show you. Standing in the bed is a really good way to look. What you can do, and I didn't do this because I measured, but you can measure, you know, dead center on the crossbar there. Make sure it lines up with your antenna. But also standing here in the bed, you can see the gap all along the sides and the front, and it looks perfect. It's literally identical on both sides. Hopefully it turns out on camera and it doesn't look cockeyed because of different colors, you know, in the gaps and stuff. But trust me, you guys know me and my OCD if you follow the channel. Gaps are perfect. It's dead centered. Time to mark our holes. One other thing I want to point out real quick, guys, if you look at my wind fairing, you can see it doesn't come all the way up. That's because I got, I believe it's called the half cut or something like that on their website. Basically, I have a cutout for a 40-inch light bar. We're going to be putting a 40-inch bar going across from last fit. Just waiting for that to get here. Okay, so just so you know, your wind fairing may extend up a little bit farther. Just wanted to point that out. Now, marking our holes, one other thing I want to show you before you go ahead and mark your holes. If you look, hopefully, let me turn the light on real quick. If you look, you can see how my rivet mounts are centered in the gutter there, okay? Get them centered the best you can before you mark your holes. It'll just give you a little bit more wiggle room once everything is drilled for fitment. So to mark your holes, you can do whatever you're comfortable with. Some people like to use a punch, a marker, whatever you want to do. Whatever you do, though, just try to get it dead center in the hole. What I'm going to do, I don't want to use my punch because then I'm not going to be able to see down in there. I'm just taking a very, very small Phillips head screwdriver or a flathead, whatever you have, just a very tiny one. And this is only a foam layer. It's a thick, heavy-duty foam, but it's only foam. So I'm going to take this screwdriver, get it dead center in the middle of all 8 holes, make an indentation, and that way I know I'm, you know, spot on dead center of these holes. And you can definitely push down hard enough. I went right into the foam there. You're not going to be able to see it probably, but that works perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and do that on all 8 holes, get the dead center marked. We'll get the rack back off and do our rivets. All right, I'm sure this is going to be everybody's favorite part, drilling the holes. So if you remember in the beginning of the video, I mentioned I would highly recommend getting a drill stop. See that black circle on my drill bit there? That does exactly what it sounds like it does. When you're drilling these holes, once you get through the foam layer on the roof and you get to the actual roof itself, when you go through, the drill's going to want to plunge down. That drill stop stops that from happening. So our drill won't go any deeper than that distance right there. That distance is exactly 1/2 inch. I used one of my setup blocks for woodworking, so I know it is exactly 1/2 inch. You don't need to use one of those setup blocks, good measuring tape, whatever you have. 1/2 inch is, I believe, going to be just the right amount to go through. And again, that's why I highly recommend using these drill stops. As you're going to see, it'll stop us from plunging too deep. Your airbags are right underneath here. That's why you can't go too far. Okay, so that's very, very important. As far as size, we're going to start with a 1/16 inch bit. Very tiny, should go through here really easily. We'll probably step up at least 3 times or so, but just so you know, we're starting with a 1/16. So find our holes that you can see that I poked through our mounts, dead center, And I'm just going to kind of push down through the foam just a little bit, and then we'll just start kind of feeling our way down through the foam. And I can tell we're at the roof. So I don't know if you heard that, but now that's how I know we're through the roof. You probably heard that kind of pop through there. If I didn't have that drill stop on, the drill would have wanted to plunge down. And again, your airbags are not too far below there. So if you listen to anything I tell you in this video, get drill stops. I will link them down below. So I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this on all 8 holes with the 1/16, and then we'll step up. The final hole is going to be a 3/16. I'll probably go to, you know, a 1/8 and then to the 3/16. But just so you know what we're doing, I'm going to go around. I'm not going to show it on camera. That's a waste of time. So I'm going to go around and do all 8 holes. All right, guys, here we are next day. I called it a night last night. Drilling these holes was, I'm not going to lie to you, a nightmare at first. One of the biggest tips I can give you for this install is make sure you step up at least 4 or 5 times. The first hole that I drilled, I started with that 1/16, and then I went to a 1/8 and then the 3/16, which is the final size, and it was a nightmare. It just didn't, the 1/16 went through good, the 1/8 did not want to go through. I ended up breaking a bit, I had to dig it out. It was just a nightmare. So the rest of the holes, I stepped up. I went from a 1/16, I went up 4 or 5 times, just go up nice and slow, and then it actually went much smoother. So all 8 holes are drilled to the final size of 3/16. Now we're ready to take, just take your 4 rivet mounts back off the rack, and we're going to be now attaching these with the rivets. So basically, before you even do this, just take a rivet and make sure they'll go down in. And I did notice that some of the rivets they send you are like, they're not all exactly the same size. It's really weird. So like this one here, you can see I had to kind of wiggle down, and you know, just be careful there. But just make sure the rivets will go through these holes before you get the mounts lined up, and you know, give yourself a headache. So there you can see this one goes right through this hole perfectly fine, but yet that other one gave me a little bit of a problem. So just pay attention to that. All right, so we're going to take the silicone, and we're just going to put a generous glob right in the hole and just slightly around it. There will be squeeze out once you know, clamp this down. You can clean it up if you want, but again, you want to make sure this is a very good seal. So we're just going to take the silicone, put a glob right in the hole, and then kind of right around the hole as well. You could always go back and clean this up a little bit when you're done, but you want to make sure you get a good seal with this for obvious reasons. You don't want rain or water getting into your roof. Okay, then we're going to take 2 rivets and get them started through the mount. And now we're just going to pop down into the 2 holes. As you can see there, so now the mount is seated. So now we're just going to take our rivet tool and clamp these rivets down, and we're good to go. The other thing, these manual, I just got a cheap one off Amazon. I don't do a whole lot with rivets, so I didn't want to spend the money on a decent one. If you have a decent rivet tool, this will be much easier for you. These cheaper ones kind of suck. As you're going to see, you have to make sure you have the right nose on it, 3/16 size. They are labeled. And as you're going to see, they're not easy to squeeze. And I mean, I know I'm getting old. Might not be as strong as I used to be, but you want to do this until you'll hear the rivet snap off. And there you go. So as you can see, and then the mandrel will come back out for you, okay? Again, especially if you have like a power rivet tool, this part will be way easier for you. I don't do any riveting, so I just got something cheap. But so we're just going to go around, do that in all 8 locations, exactly what I just showed you, and then we'll be ready to put the roof back up, and we're coming down the home stretch. So I'm not going to show this on camera. It's the exact same thing in all of the locations. Go around and do this, and you know, make sure your mounts are nice and tight. All right, guys, all 4 rivet mounts are secured to the truck. Basically now all we're going to do is put the rack back up for the final time. Make sure your feet or your mounts are slid all the way out again, so when we put it up on the truck, this doesn't end up on top of your roof on any painted surfaces, so you can see all 4 are slid out to the edge. I'm going to grab my wife and get it back up on the truck. All right, guys, so we're going to take the M8 bolts and washers that secure the rivet mounts to our feet. Make sure you have those ready. My wife has the 4 for her side, two on each foot. We're going to put it back up there. I'm going to let her get her 4 started, again, because I'm a gentleman. Valentine's Day is here. And then I'll get my 4 started, and we'll secure this thing down. All right, so you want to get all 8 just started. Don't tighten anything down until all 8 are at least in. Then we can go back and tighten all of them down with a 13 millimeter. That's what the heads are. That's going to align it front to back, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. But once we get those tightened, you want to leave the top of the feet that go into the crossbars. They should still be loose, because now we're going to go side to side again and get that center there. Then we can make our final tighten downs, and we're just about done. The other thing you're going to want too is it is easier to use an extension when you're ready to tighten the M8s down with that 13 millimeter, just because of the crossbars. Just easier to use an extension to get down in here. All right, guys, so we went back, got it centered from side to side now again, using the same process. Gaps are perfectly, equal on both sides. My OCD is happy. So now we can come back with a 7/16 and tighten the bolts that are screwing the mounts up into the bottom of the crossbars. Just make sure it doesn't shift on you when you're doing this. We are almost done. Don't forget to tighten your wind fairing if you haven't done so already. It's a 4 millimeter Allen wrench, so 2 on each side. All that's left to do now is I'm going to put the remaining crossbars up, and we'll give this thing a look. We'll test it out with the sunroof, with the panoramic moonroof. Make sure everything works good there. I'm not exactly sure how many bars I'm going to put up there just yet, but obviously you'll get a good look at that. So tighten down that wind fairing, get your crossbars up. Let's take it outside for a look. There she is, guys. I could not be happier with how this thing turned out. Let's take a closer look. I'll show you where we put the crossbars. I did use all 7. Follows the body of the truck really well. Fits perfectly, and it is solid as a rock. So you can see, maybe I'll get up there and show you where we have the crossbars, but you can see where the button heads are. That's obviously where the crossbars are. But we'll give you a closer look at that as well when we do the sunroof, or the panoramic moonroof. But man, I could not be happier. Looks awesome, solid as a rock. Love it. Stay tuned for the bed rack, all that good stuff. As I mentioned, we're going to be turning this into a little bit of an overland build, start doing a lot of camping and outdoors, and start doing videos like that here on the channel. Let's take a look at the moonroof. So before we do the moonroof, I'll give you a little bit of a look. And this is totally customizable. All you got to do is loosen up the button heads, and you can slide these bars anywhere you want in the track. So it's totally up to you, personal preference, and what you're going to be tying down up there. So that's where we went with ours to start. Pretty good spacing. And again, solid as a rock. Here's an up close look at the moonroof, and you can see it works perfectly fine. Clears well, no hitting anywhere. The only thing I may, and I'll have to test this out, but if you put a crossbar in this slot here, that may possibly interfere, but I mean, they have slots everywhere. So even if it does, honestly, that's not a big deal. Just move your crossbar. Obviously you can see we have this one to the front edge of this line. We could obviously move this one back here with no problems. That is the only slot I'm not sure. I'm actually going to test that out for you, and I'll put it on the screen and let you know if there's any issues with putting a crossbar in this location here. But as you can see, no issues with where we have ours right now. Man, the things I do for you guys. So you can see we have it in here. I've already tested it out. It does clear. When you have it all the way to the front of the slot or the rear, it definitely clears. When you have it right here in the middle is when it comes the closest. So let me show you what I mean. We'll go ahead and open the sunroof, and you can see how close it comes. So you may just want to avoid it. It does not hit. I can't get the camera low enough, or the sidebar is going to be in the way. It doesn't hit, but it just barely clears when you have the crossbar in the middle of this slot here. Okay, so I'm just going to avoid that. I mean, again, it doesn't hit at all. I didn't want one there anyway. I liked mine back where we had it, so I'm going to move mine back there. But just so you guys know, for your information, if you want to use that slot, you absolutely can. All right, guys, there you have it, the Grizzly roof rack from Sherpa. Definitely not the easiest install we've ever done on the channel, but you can definitely do it by yourself if you just kind of take your time and follow the steps, follow the couple tips that I mentioned in the video. When I say by yourself, you do need a second person to get it up and, you know, up and down from the truck. I don't know if you can safely do that on your own. I really don't think you could without scratch and paint up and all that good stuff. But again, not the easiest install we've ever done, but it's not all that bad, honestly. Take your time, get those holes lined up perfectly and drilled, follow the, you know, stepping up the drill bits like I mentioned, and you'll be good to go. So the only thing missing is the 42-inch last fit light bar that's going to be coming. As you guys know, Last Fit's a channel partner, so I have a bar coming from them to put on the front, and then we'll also be doing some side some lights on the side as well for when we do start camping with the truck. So we'll have some lights you know, shining off the side of the truck. So any questions, as always, put them down below. I'm happy to help you guys. You guys know that. I do try to answer everything. I know I missed some here and there because the channel is growing so well, and I appreciate that. But questions or comments, concerns, put them down below. We'll get them addressed for you. And stay tuned for the rest of this build. I am very excited for what we have planned. Thanks for watching, guys. We will catch you on the next one.